Dr. Bryant, I gotta tell you, it's an honor to be here with
Mm.
you. I'm a fan. I probably should not be doing this interview because I'm not biased at all uh, on this one. Thank you for your time.
Thank you. I appreciate it. Glad for the invitation and good to speak with you.
Well, you were actually in my town, Atlanta, here on base
Yes.
last week, if I'm not
Oh
mistaken.
my goodness, that's right. I sure was.
And I was gonna get down there and was out of town. So that's kind of where it kind of went without. I was just so upset so myself. But
Yes.
I gotta ask this question. When
Mhm.
did you know that you had to write this amazing work of
Oh,
homecoming? When did you
yes. Thank you. So I will say, growing up, I'm a PK, pastor's daughter. And so a big message that my brother and I both received was the importance of giving back, right? That it shouldn't, whatever you do shouldn't just be for you, but to be a blessing to other people. And so, in part as it relates to that, I created the Homecoming podcast to be able to share information about mental health. And it was interesting because at first I would share kind of mental health information in quotes in social media. And then people would have all these questions because, with like Twitter, it's like two sentences, right?
know?
So I said, okay, I'll do the podcast so that I can give people more information. But then people email after they listen to an episode of the podcast with more questions. So I'm like, I could keep trying to individually keep up with all these email questions, or I could put it in a book and make the resource available to people, which is one of the things I'm so glad about with the book being accessible. So I've written academic books before, and those are textbooks, so they're very expensive. So to be able to write a book that people can get for $20 makes me so happy.
Wow. Um, I gotta ask this because we're in a unique time in life. I think we can all
Yeah,
admit that. So here you are writing the book during the pandemic.
yeah,
How much did that weigh into your work? Fair question.
yes. Absolutely. No, it was crucial because as I'm helping clients through it, I'm going through it myself. Like we're all in this pandemic. And I think it's a part of different ways that each of us cope with that sense of like powerlessness, right? You're stuck in the house, right? What can you do? And so it was actually helpful for me, therapeutic to be working on this during that time.
Hmm.
And of course, it's also fresh in my mind because of what I'm seeing within clients, within family. Churches were having me to come in virtually to provide trainings, not only for members, but for pastors who were just really burned out. And so this issue of trauma was everywhere. So my area of expertise was already trauma recovery. So it's like the times met the person. And
Wow.
so this was really relevant.
Um, Here you are writing this. We're in this pandemic. What have we gone through? Is that a fair
Yes,
question? We've gone through a lot.
absolutely. Yeah. And I appreciate the question because I think sometimes we're in environments where people are trying to act like business as usual. And so some people are struggling in silence because they think they're the only one. But we're all affected by recognized and unrecognized losses. So for some people, that shows up as depression. And depression, is that sense of a very depressed mood every day for at least 2 weeks. So it's not like, oh, if I was sad today and I'm happy tomorrow, that's not clinical depression. But when people have that sense of hopelessness or despair, the things they used to enjoy, they don't enjoy anymore,
Yeah.
the lack of energy, a change in their appetite, a change in their sleeping, and so a lot of people in the pandemic dealt with emotional eating and dealt with insomnia. So it can show up in those ways. It can show up as anxiety. Sometimes some of us are full-time worriers. And I think especially in faith communities, often mental health gets dismissed and people present it as if you have faith in God, like you'll never have distress, which is not only untrue, it's not even biblical.
Right.
And so, recognizing within ourselves how we have been affected and how we have coped. Now, I should say some people cope by staying busy. So then it might not look like despair. It's like they, cleaning their house a million times, creating errands when there are no errands, trying to sign up for a million committees because they can't be still. So that can look like you're a productive person. But underneath that, if what is really driving you is insecurity and fear, and it's not really coming from a healthy place.
I felt like you knew us and
Mm.
that you know us, if that makes sense.
Yes.
How much did we weigh into your writing? It's like,
Yes. We meaning the listeners, or who's the we?
the listeners, the people of faith,
Yes. Yes. Yes.
how much did we come into your time of worship
Right.
writing?
Yeah.
How much did we play into it?
Right. Absolutely. I am, definitely it's a conversational book, right? I'm talking to the reader.
With us. I was like,
I am. It's
there
very
were so many
personal.
moments I was like sitting in the house going, that'll preach. Yes. Going, soul care. Yes, I got that one. Yes.
Oh, yeah. And thinking about is one of the things I teach at Pepperdine University.
Great
And
school.
one of the things I stress to our students is when you're doing work within communities, faith communities or otherwise, you want to speak in such a way that people understand you, because sometimes we talk in jargon
Yeah,
and just using a whole bunch of big words. And because you're surrounded by each other, you don't realize you're speaking jargon, but nobody knows what you're talking about. So
yeah.
I always have that in my mind of, if I'm explaining it like to a family member, or if I was sitting over at First AME Church trying to talk about post-traumatic stress, like how I would say that, because the point isn't for it to sound impressive, is for people to get it. So I need to be clear.
I was in a room recently, Monday night in Birmingham, Alabama, and about 150 of us, Dr. Bryant, and the person asked, the presenter asked, how many of you have lost someone to COVID?
Mm.
And the whole entire room hand went up.
Wow. Wow.
And it hit me at that moment. There are moments throughout this journey, I don't know about you, where it tends to hit you, where it
Yes.
hit me where I said, this has gone from an abstract theory to an
Yeah.
abstract problem to very personal. We
Right.
all know someone
Yeah.
who's died from
That's
it.
right. That's
Do,
right.
do we need a national homecoming? Um,
Absolutely. I love that, because it's true. It's not,
yeah,
there's a difference between individual trauma and collective trauma, right? So a natural disaster or like a medical pandemic, it's affecting everyone at the same time. So there's our individual path, but also what it means for governments and agencies and institutions and corporations
mm,
to be trauma informed,
yeah,
and that's a lot of the work I've been doing, because I think people are so quick to wanting to, like, let's quote unquote get back to normal, but people are carrying so much. It's like when I'm teaching our classes and someone says, may I have an extension on a paper? Of course. Of course, like, of course. So we want to be tuned in and show up with compassion toward ourselves and toward each other. And I'll say, especially in both communities of faith and with people of color, often we mask our emotions. And so people don't may not look like they're falling apart, because that's how we were raised. It's like you pull it together, brush your hair, put some Vaseline on, you just show
make
up
it
and say,
work.
praise the Lord,
Yeah,
right? But on the inside, people are like two steps from a cliff. And so we want to not wait for people to cry out before we respond with compassion.
mm. I don't want to say best part of the book because there were a couple of parts of the book where very convicting. Dr.
Mm.
Bryant, by the way, to me, and that's why my wife would literally say that was the best part of the book. Let's get toward me. But you say in the book, your tears are prayers. How does trauma dictate our spiritual lives?
Yes, absolutely. So, the first piece I would just say is, in terms of the tears being prayers, is some experiences we don't have the words for.
Right.
Like, I could say it to you, but it doesn't capture it, right? It's like we talk about like a soul cry, when you just think about like humming and rocking and, that which is even unspeakable, not only because of stigma, but even the words don't do it justice. And so there is release in our tears, physically, emotionally, and I would even say spiritually. When I was going through seminary, we had a course called Ministry During Times of Crisis.
Mm,
And the instructor said, every church now has a praise team, but what we need is a lamentation team.
yeah,
And I said, yes, right? Because we love high worship, but we need places where people can grieve.
yeah,
And so, to your question about how trauma shows up in our spirituality, um, it all depends on if we're ready to have an authentic faith walk, right? If I'm going to be real with God and with myself, then the trauma is going to show up versus when people are just doing a script, right? How are you? Blessed and highly favored, right? You know, oh, I'm going through a storm, coming up the rough side of the mountain, right? We
yeah.
talk in all these metaphors, but if our prayers are genuine, then they would speak to our trauma. If our preaching is authentic and relevant, it will speak to the trauma. When we are deciding our programming for this year, if the programming this year looks like the same agenda we had in 2005, we've missed it, right? We're not paying attention to where people are. And so it very much needs to show up, and to show up, one of the things I would love us to lean into is being more okay with the mystery,
Wow.
meaning we often want to have these ready-made cookie cutter answers for people, and often those little answers don't really give people any peace, right? You know, we want to come up with a justification for every trauma, and it doesn't really relieve it. So just the example I often give is when someone is grieving the loss of a mother and people say God needed another voice in his heavenly choir. It's like, what are you talking about? What are you talking? That's some nonsense.
It's like that makes sense. I love Dr. Bryant when I'm around someone, and if they're giving me a lot
Yeah,
of metaphors, I always
yeah.
go, the wall is high. Uh, you know,
Yes,
I mean, the wall is
yes,
high. If I see
right.
a ton of metaphors, I always
Yeah,
think something's off here.
that's
Because
it.
life
That's it.
to be lived in metaphors. It's
Right.
not. That doesn't make sense.
Hey,
You know.
that does not even make sense. Like, come on, let's the
Like,
Jericho. Yeah, let's bring it on down. Let's bring it on down.
please. Okay, my time is running out. I cannot believe this. You also say in the book, coming home requires you to slow down.
Yeah,
That
yeah,
one hit me because I'm Mr. Get up, have lots of stuff going on, and you're going, you gotta slow down. And how do you do that in a world
yeah.
where
Yes.
boundaries just kind of went out the door in the
Right, right.
years?
Such a good question. And what I encourage people to do is when a request is made of you, don't give an immediate answer,
Mm,
because there are some of us who are wired or have been raised to constantly say yes,
yes.
right? It's like if anybody asks you for anything, you just got to do it. Yeah, yeah. And don't know how, don't know when, don't know, and sometimes people sneak up on you. They ask you something small. It seems small, but it was actually like huge. It's going to take your whole life. So to say, let me take a look at my schedule and get back to you. It sounds really exciting, but let me get back to you. And then to prayerfully and intentionally look at what you already have on your plate. Because one of the things is when we say yes to everything, we often end up doing a mediocre job
Every time.
because because we're cut thin, we're just trying to like get it done versus really moving in a spirit of excellence. And so it is a gift to be able to set the boundary to say no. And the other piece that I really grabbed hold of in the pandemic was referrals, because there are other gifted people besides us. But sometimes we're the go-to person, and people think like if it's not me, it won't get done, and that's just not true. So in the pandemic, I had to put a sign on my website. I wasn't taking any new clients, but I have an army of former graduate students who had private practices, who had like 5 clients, and I started sending the clients their way till they all got full, right? And they're excellent people. They're just less well known. And so give other people an opportunity. Sometimes we need to step back so that other people will step forward. And we also want to think about how much of it is ego driven where sometimes we get into that thing of, if it wasn't for me, everything would fall apart. Everybody needs me, right? And so to release that I am not the Messiah and God uses many people.
Yeah, I always tell people, you're not the Holy Spirit. God
Right.
has one.
That's it. That's it.
And you're
That's
not it.
right. Oh, absolutely.
Next,
Yeah.
last question. I gotta ask this.
Yes.
Have you been surprised at where God has placed you? Um, because I mean, I don't want to say any other way. Like you've taken off.
Mm,
Is that surprising?
yeah. So, in some ways, yes. In some ways, I will say that my parents were very intentional
Oh,
in their parenting about us being limitless, right? That all things are possible. So, for example, when I was just elected president-elect of the American Psychological Association, and so it's the largest psychological organization, over 130,000 members.
yeah.
And I'll say many people were surprised that I won, but but I'm not surprised, right? Of what is possible. But I will say, just as we come to a close, that because I'm in a place in my life where I don't need it, then God says I can have it, right? When we're so hungry for things that we think will define us or that will make me an important person, then that's when we're not trustworthy with it, because like we can lack integrity because you just want that so badly.
Mm.
But I really, any door that opens, I'm looking to see how I can use that to be of service. So then, to be trustworthy with the blessings.
I've been wondering like why you've gotten to where you've gotten to, and you said it earlier. Referrals. I mean, it's amazing, and I don't mean this in a prosperity gospel way, but it's amazing. Anytime I give something away, it's
Receive.
how God goes, okay, I can trust you. You
Yes.
know,
Yeah.
I
That generosity instead of like scarcity or clinging or fighting people.
right. Last question. Ah, when you hit send on this, what did you think? Like, do you think it would take off the way it's taken off? Not give me the limitless speech, doctor.
Right. Right.
Like, did you know people like me would go, wow, like I literally recommend this book to so many people
Mm,
now.
wow.
And I
No,
bought my
I
wife
am
a copy, and I'm going, 'cause I told her you cannot have mine. I mean, you already
I
got yours.
love it. I will tell you in all honesty, I continue to be blown away daily.
Oh,
Like yesterday on Twitter, someone shared that they took the book with them when they were visiting the gravesite of their child,
wow.
and then someone else shared they bought the book but came home and their husband was reading it, right? So another person shared they bought it for themselves and their 12-year-old daughter won't give it back. So I'm just really grateful and in awe um, at the way the word is moving.
All I can say is this last thank you. You have made people who are in ministry, but who also feel called to other things. You have just represented us well. And hearing
Mm.
Tony the couple on CBS this morning go, what do you not do? I'm like, Tony, I'm asking the same question, Tony. I okay, like, what do you not do? Because I
Yes.
like one thing, okay. You know, like three or four things well. So
Oh, thank
this
you.
has been the highlight of my day. I know our time is up. I've enjoyed it. Thank you.
I've enjoyed it as well. Blessings
Uh,
to you and to all of your
Next
listeners.
time you're back to Atlanta, you just call a brother. I mean,
Yes,
like I'm in
that's
the front
right.
row.
That's right.
Just
Yes,
hey, in
definitely.
all seriousness, I wish you the best. I wish you a wonderful afternoon, and I'm looking forward to the next one. I know that's an insult to tell an author. Larry put
Yeah,
one out. There's
yeah,
another
you're
one.
right. There's more to come. There's more to come.
Dr. Bryant, thank you. I wish you God's best. This has been
Oh,
good. Dr.
thank you.
Bryant, thank you so much. Have a great afternoon. Good job. Good
Thank you.
job. You've been overrun. Thank you so much for your time.
Bless you.
Bye bye.